we're gonna talk about equitable services. And if you notice that we got Title 8, Part F. Title 8, Part F is your equitable services for Title 2 and Title 4. And I'm gonna go through all those titles in a few minutes. But with equitable services, Title 8, Part F, we want to provide all children significant opportunity to receive a fair, equitable, and a high quality education. Remember, under ESDA Section 8501, this is the guidance for equitable services. It requires that an LEA participating in a covered ESDA program in consultation and with appropriate private school officials to provide eligible private school children and educators with services or other benefits that are equitable. So this is what governs your Title 8 Part F in each one of your sections. For Title 1 is Section 1117 that covers that as well under ESDA. Your Title 8 Part F, all of your private schools are eligible to participate in Title 8 Part F. Just keep in mind that the private school, you need to make sure that they are nonprofit. This goes for Title 1 as well. Nonprofit school, that's what it has to be as a private school in order to participate. Your consultation part of it is going to be the same thing as Title 1. So everything we talked about on consultations, which I'll touch on in a few minutes, under Title 1, Title 8 Part F follows the exact same consultations. Your Title 8 Part F covers all of those titles that are listed. Title 1 Part C, Title 2 Part A, Title 3 Part A, Title 4 Part A and B, and Part F under Title 4. So your students enrolled in private schools are located in the area served by your program are eligible to participate. If you know, remember, Title 1, you are required to go outside of the geographical boundaries. Well, with Title A, Part F, any of those that I just talked about, those grants that I spoke to you about, you are only required to go within the district boundaries. You do not have to go outside to inquire about students attending schools outside of your area. Of course, we need to understand that there may be some restrictions based on the purpose of the ESA program, and that's basically when you're title. If you have specific guidelines under like Title 3 Part 8, for example, there are going to be some restrictions that may be based. So you need to make sure you're looking at each title that may have some special restrictions that Title 8 Part F does not, and then in addition to Title 8 Part F, excuse me, where the funding and resources may limit the number of children who can participate in the program, the LEA must consult with private school officials on this matter. And that's dealing with those restrictions. So like I said, it's important that you make sure that the ESDA sections that you are reviewing them, 8501, 81, and of course 8501B2, and follow the guidance according to that. Your responsibilities, again, is similar to the ones with Title 1. We just need to make sure that we're listing all of the available services that they can participate in. Important that you make sure you set your specific dates. As I stated yesterday, please make sure that we are having open lines communication with them to understand their dates and your expectations from them when they are inquiring about participation. Ensure all services go to the low achieving students of participating schools. Maintain ongoing communication, which is very, very important. And like the other ones with Title 1, we maintain all materials, the monies, properties that are purchased, everything stays up under you as the LEA. Again, we need to make sure that you are identifying and reaching out to all the private schools who see that is only inside your geographical area. So please omit that for Title 8 Part F. It is only inside. Make a note of that inside of your geographical boundaries. Make sure you're verifying your physical locations every year. You need to do that. Of course, when you're sending out your invitations, you know that you are going to be doing that during that time. And of course, you need to make sure that they're accepting or declining. It's important that you have that on file with you. And of course, with us, when it comes down to you submitting your paperwork, you have it loaded in GIMS. Now, the last one I wanted to speak on is basically about the transfer of funds. If you have discussed with everyone in the district and you made a decision that your Title IV is going to be transferred, you need to make sure this is communicated with all of the private schools. I say this to you because you cannot hold Title IV funds just to serve private schools. So if you are transferring all of your Title IV, you need to make sure that's communicated with them. If you by chance are going to split your Title IV, and half of it you're going to leave the Title IV and half of it you're going to do Title II, that portion that you're keeping on the Title IV, that still falls up under the Title VIII Part F, and that private school should be considered for the rest of that portion. I hope that wasn't confusing. I hope it's clear as well. But if you're doing a full transfer, they cannot receive any money. So you need to make sure that's being communicated to them during your meaningful consultation. This is just an example, and I'm not going to go through the whole example. It is actually on the slides that you currently have. So therefore, you can see how you're supposed to calculate it. You know, the Title I, we're going to finding out the poverty levels and different calculations that you have for Title I to consider them for participation. But for your Title VIII Part F, all should follow this particular question, which basically is just doing your enrollment of all schools, of your public school, the entire enrollment of your private schools, in order for you to come up with the ethical services that will be given to this particular private school. Any questions with that? Again, discuss during the initial consultation about your timelines and your expectations from them, because each one of these private schools do have the right to have their funds go past the 1 year. They can have it the full cycle of the grant, but we need to make sure if you are insisting that they have it done within a year's time, that this is communicated to them when you're doing the meaningful consultation at the beginning. Private schools can deny their funds, and of course, if they deny their funds, the allocations will have to come back. And then you will do a even distribution between the private school, the public schools, and any participating private schools that are left. For Title I, remember, you have to go in, offer to the private schools first before you can do anything else with it. Title VIII Part F does not require that. Is that you just need to make sure that when you pull it back, for whatever that school that denied, you give a portion of it to the rest of the participating private schools. Now, those participating that don't want it, then the entire amount will go back to the district. Just keep in mind, we make sure we're doing the communication at all times. The new requirement, again, is just like Title I. All grants that you have, you need to make sure you're loading your private school information. As your invitations, showing us where you did your due diligence to contact them. We need to see their acceptance. We need to see certified mailing receipts. Everything needs to be placed in the GIMS application under the related document fields. Our resources that we have are all listed above. The first four that you see are basically for you to have as an example for you to use. The last, the one at the fifth one, which is the affirmation and consultation for Part 2 and Part 4, that does need to be completed if they are participating. And that form will need to be emailed to the Equitable Services email account. We have to maintain the file there at SED, which means I'm responsible for making sure that's on file. So please make sure if they are participating, that form is completed and sent to us. Any questions? That means I ain't done. It's Title 8 part of it. It has its own guidance, and it is on our website. If you may find it out. Whatever they have left, you're going to be the ones to take and divide that into whatever it is that you have. So if there's $600 left in another school, you got none of the private school participating in free system without the school fee, unless they deny it and you pull the full 600 back. Yes. You need to give it a statement to them that they're not able to use that, put it on file, and then you'll be able to come back and do whatever. You need to go through, it needs to go to your participating process. If you transfer it to have private schools that are participating in that, they are eligible to get that part that you should address. Yeah, if they want to participate in Title IV and they don't transfer, you're not saving, you're not holding any funds back for the public school to use. They cannot just, you can't say it for just that purpose. Because once you've done it, you already send out your emails and your letters of intent. That's why the report, they should make sure your district has decided what they need to decide at the beginning, that they're gonna transfer funds, because you need to be as transparent as possible to those private schools and tell them upfront, we're not gonna have Title IV funds, we're gonna transfer it all to you, so you can't be eligible there. Just don't wanna give them anything, I'll let it stand on that you didn't give them the communication that you needed to give to them, because they'll make a mistake and go to DC about it. You're right. You first, then DC. Any other questions? All right, we got Title V grant. That's it. Thank you all.
All right, we're going to talk about REAP. So if you're not a REAP district, just bear with us. I reckon for a few minutes, we won't be long talking about REAP. I will say that I have a REAP grant for 26, so we'll move forward with the Title V. Our office, though, receives allocation for this grant from the U.S. Department of Ed. So even though I say I have a REAP and I'm not saying I have the REAP allocations just yet. We have to wait on information from the U.S. Department of Ed. But I do feel pretty good about this particular grant. So we're going to dive on into it. Remember that if you are a REAP recipient, we don't give these funds out at preliminary, we give them out in the fall. Okay, so you wouldn't know anything right now, kind of like we gave out 1 and 4. We don't give out REAP right now. We wait until the fall, because like I said, we're waiting on data from the U.S. Department of Ed, and we have to wait on it. So that one will be a little bit longer coming. It's kind of like N&D. We don't put anything into GEMS for N&D or REAP until the fall. What is the purpose of Title IV? I will tell you that this has been deemed like the slush fund for many years. And I'm going to talk about why it kind of comes across in that way in just a moment, and kind of clarify why it should not be thought of in that way, so we're gonna get into that in just a moment. But the purpose of Title V is to address the unique needs of rural school districts that frequently lack the personnel and resources needed to compete effectively for federal competitive grants and who receive formula grant allocations in too small amounts to be effective in meeting their intended purposes. This one is non-competitive, and it comes down to the SEA, so it comes down to the Department of Ed for us to then distribute it out. So that is why you hear from us in terms of REAP as well. We call it REAP, but really there are two parts. And so the piece that South Carolina receives is actually called RLIS, the Rural and Low Income Schools Program. So if you look on your pen, it's going to say RLIS because that is the one that we receive. It provides funds for states to sub-grants to districts with NCES, that was a mouthful, designation. And the last bullet will tell you that we do administer that program. So when it says we administer that program, it is administered the same way as like we do Title I or II or IV. We run it the same way. How are you eligible? How is eligibility determined for this? Okay, so a lot of it is determined by locale code, and you see that on the screen. And to be considered low income, 20% or more of the children ages 5 to 17 served by the LEA must be from families with incomes below the poverty line. Based on data from the U.S. Census Bureau, we call that SAFE, the Small Area Income and Poverty Estimate. So most of the work done with the allocations for this grant is done by the U.S. Department of Education. We don't really on our end get into it. They just send it to us after they've done all their research based upon this criteria. How does it work? Well, it works by application just like all the others. We load it into GEMS at final allocation for those districts that receive it. And a needs assessment has to be conducted for it, just like it does the other grants. Honestly, to cut down on work, if I were in your shoes, I would do one large comprehensive needs assessment. I would upload it into each of the grants that I receive funding for. And I would tie it back to the district and school strategic plan. Just let everything hold hands together, cut down on work for yourself. So one large needs assessment that says what the needs are for the district and which fund is going to help fund those things. In just a moment, you'll see that Title V is an extension of the other grants anyway. So if you are doing a comprehensive needs assessment attached with your district's goals, you can kind of just decide which fund is helping do what. Okay, so I'm okay if it's the same needs assessment. I just need to be able to link everything to the activities that I'm reading. The assessment goes back to stakeholder engagement, same as all the others. So that's why I say, pull everybody to the table. Have a big conversation, 2 or 3, however long it takes you to determine the needs of the district based on the data. Everybody sign the sign-in sheet, have an agenda, keep all of that for compliance. Everybody gets a say at the stakeholder table. The assessment summary narrative should include a discussion of the data indicating the need. Okay, and you're going to upload that into the related documents section of every grant. Okay, why do I have to do that, Jennifer? That is just so much work. Put it in each one. I don't read while I'm reading Title I. So I would prefer to be able to have everything I need for the grant I'm in right there. It's on one screen and the activities are on the other. So it can be the same document. We're just asking you to upload it into each application. Just easier that way. And it also tells you to understand the guidance from the U.S. Department of Ed and the SCDE when you develop your plan. Okay, so let's talk about it. Remember that I said for all the other grants we talked about that you have to evaluate. Even though Title V seems a lot easier, you are still supposed to be evaluating the activities that are in that plan. Did it work? Did you get the bang for your buck? Did it work for the kids? Did it work for the teachers? When I say did it work for the teachers, it might be that you are using this funding as an extension of Title II. So if that's the case, that's why I said teachers. Might be using it as an extension of Title I, an extension for what you're doing for the kids. We're going to look at that in just a minute. But you want to evaluate, we're going to send a survey so that we can pull info to see how is it working for your district as well. So in years past, we would not send an evaluation survey out for REAP. We started that this past year. And so as long as we have REAP, we will continue to send out that survey so that we can look to see how effective is this funding in helping with meeting the goals of your districts and schools. It holds to be old supplement, not supplant. So you want to realize that just like the extensions of the other grants, it is like that. It's going to come on top of what you already have. Second bullet goes to support that. If you're new to REAP, the LEAs may not use Title V funds to pay for activities that in the absence of those funds would be provided with state loan. Okay, this is where you see that it's an extension of the other grants. Okay, so if you receive RLIS funds, you can use it for activities that are authorized under Title I, II, III, IV, or parent engagement, parent involvement activities. And the GEMS application is going to give you a little box beside each one of those options. So there'll be a little narrative box beside where it says Title I, narrative box beside Title II, III, IV, parent involvement. So on your end, what you do is you decide how you want to use these funds to extend your goals for that grant. So what might that look like? I need extra support in Title II. So maybe I'm going to fund a PD out of REAP. You would go into GEMS, into that narrative box, and drop that PD activity in that box, just as though you were putting it in the Title II plan. Okay, if you need some kind of supplies for Title I, an extension of classroom supplies, you would go into that narrative box and you type in what those supplies are, Title I. Whatever you need is as the extension of those grants, you can use this money. And this really gets into how these funds are allocated, how they come down to us, the data that the U.S. Department of Ed uses to come up with who's getting this money. And so number 2 is where I was telling you this morning that we submit a spreadsheet to give to them with information on how much our districts get out of Title II and Title IV allocations. So that's based on the previous year. So we submit that. They look at average daily attendance. We give contacts for the districts. We submit all of that, and then they provide us with what's called a master eligibility spreadsheet that shows the allocations for the eligible districts. And so that comes down to Sheree, and from there, she starts her process with the REAP. So as I was saying early on about Title II, reading for yourself, number 2, that we submit Title II then for information to the U.S. Department of Ed to help with the data collection. So keep that in mind. As I said, I do have a GAN for this company. This school year. Transfer. This one is a pretty thick slide, this one and the next one, to really kind of get into the nitty-gritty of transferability. But let me go ahead and tell you, don't plan to transfer money into a grant that you don't have. Okay? You need to wait. Like, tomorrow is not the decision-making day on whether we're going to put money, transfer money in Title II. We need to wait just a little while to see what's going to happen. Otherwise, it's just going to sit. Okay, because I don't know. But when we do know a little bit more, you know, Title II comes on down the line. When I get the GAN for Title IV, at that point, this is where we will be. Okay, so typically, this is what would happen. You are permitted to transfer funds from Title II or Title IV into any of the grants listed below. So you can transfer 2 or 4 into Title I, Part A, C, D. Any of that is fine, but the thing to keep in mind if you move it to Title I, Part A, is that however much you want to transfer, we take the total Title I allocation, so if it's $19 million as a total, and we add the transfer amount to that total Title I allocation to then determine the 15%. And so you have to keep that in mind if you're going to transfer money to Title I. So you got a little farther to stretch in meeting the 15% if you move money to Title I. Sometimes districts overlook that, and then they think my 15% is this amount, when it's really not, it's a little bit more than that. So on our side, when we have to gather CSPR data, we actually have to report how many LEAs transfer Title IV into something, how many transfer Title II into something. And the Title IV office has always been very focused on transferability. And they have said, we encourage you to leave it where it's at. Okay. Well, we're in a different time slot right now than what normally would be the case. And so you have the flexibility for transferring funds. You have the flexibility for transferring funds if you need to at a certain point. So what would that look like? You can transfer all or a portion under Title II Part A and Title IV Part A. You may transfer it at any point during the 27-month period of availability. But keep in mind, you can't transfer like 25 Title II into 24 Title IV. You got to be in the same year. So 25 and 25, or whichever grant you're talking about. Number 3, an LEA may only transfer funds into a program for which that LEA is receiving an allocation. That's what I was telling you. If you do it, it's going to sit, okay, until you get a GAN, and I get one signed from from your superintendent. Okay, so it's gonna be a little while. Okay, it would sit. Sometimes people will go ahead and fill out their transfer, forms during the preliminary allocation time, and sometimes they sit. Okay. And you also know that between preliminary and final allocation, your amounts change. And so then you have to edit your form, reload it back into the grant. So, you know, those little logistics come into play as well. But keep transferability in mind for flexibility purposes, especially in this current climate. Okay, what does it look like if I really want to do it? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You have to engage in consultation with the private school. And Teresa just spoke to this. You have to tell the private school, you know, you're considering transferring Title IV. And they have to know what you're doing. They should be at the stakeholder table anyway when these conversations are happening. Look at number 4, establish the effective date for the transfer. And number 5, notify the SCA, that's the Department of Ed, of each transfer at least 30 days before the effective date of the transfer. So you are supposed to notify us that you're wanting to do that a month before you do it. Sometimes that one gets lost. Sometimes the oversight of that one is not as tight as it should be. Sometimes forms are done after you've already done it on your end. So I'm showing you how it's supposed to be for monitoring. You're supposed to notify 30 days before. And number 6, submit not later than 30 days after the date of such transfer a copy of the LEA's modified plans or applications affected by the transfer. Okay. And transfer forms go into the related documents section of a GEMS application. Put it there. Some of them have a transfer link in them. You can also put it there if you want to. You can put it in multiple places. When I pull a project, I look in both spots. Either or is fine, or both places is fine. For pulling CSPR documentation, we are able to pull a GEMS report from the transferred links in the applications. So it's very important to fill out transfer links if you're doing transferring the funds. Another question that comes up is, Jennifer, is money actually moved in gaps for transferring? No, it is not. Okay, so if you move Title IV to Title I in gaps, Title IV is still in gaps. You're going to claim it where it was put originally. So it just pretty much takes on the hat of allowability of the grant to which it's being transferred into. The money does not actually move, if you will. You're still claiming in the original pot it was allocated to you in. It's very short and sweet. It's a very tiny application as compared to some of the others that we do, but it can be a really great asset for a district if they use it, and that is simply because it is an extension of all the other grants. You can use it for whatever purpose you need. We give you a lot in a couple of days, a lot to go back and think through, contemplate on, have conversations on your side. I want to remind you of just a couple of things, and then we're going to draw for some more Edgar books. And then after that, if you serve on the committee of practitioners, if you will hang behind, we're going to meet after that. So a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, the amendment deadline for right now for GAPS is August 4th. For gyms, it needs to be before August 4th to give me time, okay, to give the program manager time to look at it, and to give me time to look at it. And if it needs to bounce back and forth for clarity, there needs to be time. Okay, so please keep in mind that maybe August 2nd needs to be your last opportunity for gyms to give us time, okay, to then be able to check the outside. And then gyms is going to sit idle August 5th to August 15th. And it'll pick back up August 16th. Please keep that in mind. Make sure you keep the August 15th cleaning deadline in mind. And know that system will shut down automatically on that day as well. Two very important things. Jewel and I will do our best to keep you in the know as we know more and learn more over the coming weeks. Next week, if you are a recipient of us reopening the 23 grants, I will be calling you or emailing you probably the beginning of next week. So you will hear from me for some of that. 23 Title I, be ready to go again the next week. 23, 2, and 4 are finishing in ART. And the 24 additional funds are finishing in ART. So over the next little bit of time, I'll be in touch with you about old money. Then we'll be in touch with you about 26 money as we know more. Questions? And yes. There. So when I say close, I'm not going to be doing any amendments, is what I'm saying. You can work in there. I just cannot can't review or approve any amendments in gyms, August 5th to 15th. Yes. So if you submit an amendment in that time block, it's going to sit there until August 16th. It'll pick back up.